I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. As everybody knows, although we've been doing this for almost going on a second year of doing this, the rest of the state and the rest of the country is slowly catching up. More and more communities, more and more states, and the federal government are starting to realize how important it is that we do early intervention and we do as much education and as much that can be done to end this terrible epidemic in our country and help out anybody and everybody and know and have the resources to do it. So when DARA was formed, the Drug Addiction Resource Alliance, the whole idea was to take all of these great people and great organizations, bring them together and educate, because lots of times people don't know there are places you can get help and there are ways in which we can save lives and save families. So that's how this started. Judge Duffy had this as her passion. She managed to convince myself and the two lieutenants from Hatfield Township and Montgomery Township and formed this organization, and it's been doing a great job ever since, but obviously everybody knows this is just the beginning. Judge Duffy asked me I get to do the thank you, so that's the easy part. And so I just want to thank Scott Rowland, our videographer, who's providing all these services complimentary, which is very important because it gives us an opportunity to have it in a form that we can get it out to more and more people who couldn't make it tonight. And it can be seen and replayed, and hopefully we can basically affect more and more people out there who get education through these different forums. I would also like to thank the Fairmount for sponsoring the sign stickers, and also remind everybody here, if you want to step up and be the sign stick, basically what it is, we put a new sticker over the signs. We're very environmental friendly. We recycle the signs and just put new stickers across the signs so we can get the signs out in the community. Because what we found is even if people don't make it to these different forums, they do stop and read the signs and say, what is DARA? They go to the website, they look it up, and they get educated as to what are these signs that have DARA, D-A-R-A, what does that mean? And they stop and they read it. And that is just one additional way in which we can educate the public on how important this is. So again, if somebody wants to be the next sign sticker sponsor, contact Judge Duffy. We're always looking forward to getting someone to cover the cost of those stickers. And again, just to remind everybody, we're always in need of people to deliver the signs to different owners about the forums that we have. As you know, we try and have a couple forums a year, and delivering the signs, putting them out and picking them up. Anybody, if you have any time and you can help, please reach out to us. We could use the help. I just want to remind everyone we do have a new email address. With the new email address, it's a lot easier to try and get it out as much to people because it's easy to remember. And it's darasaveslives@gmail.com. So again, darasaveslives@gmail.com. So it's something that sticks in your head you can remember. So when you're telling people or people say, hey, I need help, can you get me to a resource? You can tell them, hey, here's the email, darasaveslives@gmail.com. Send an email. We'll get back to you with information in any way in which we can help you. I'd like to thank Roger Hammond for designing our website, which is www.darasaveslives.com. So therefore, you know that we have this great website with all these great resources. A lot of the people you're meeting out there tonight, some of the people in this room, some of the people who couldn't make it tonight, they're all on the website. And so we have Roger put together a wonderful website so you have instant access to information and resources at any time. In the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, any time of the day or night, you can go on the website, www.darasaveslives.com, and obviously, DARA Saves Lives is what we're all about and why we're here this evening. Would also like to thank or actually ask for additional volunteers. If ever you have time and you see the different community events, we try and have a DARA table at the various community events. The whole concept is to get as much education out there, and because, sorry, Jerry, I have to give Jane Robertson the credit for the DARA, but we all came up with some great names, but Jane actually came up with DARA, and it's a great term, And we try and get to all the community events for people to see DARA, to see, hey, what is that? Because people are naturally curious. They see DARA, they want to know, what does it mean? What is it? And drug, oh, wait, what is it? And all of a sudden they get some interest in it. And even if they've had no connection, it educates them on something that's going on in the community. So again, if you're able to volunteer or help out, sit at any of the tables, just go on the website. You can sign up there, send an email and say, I know there's a community event at X, Y, and Z. Do you have a DARA table there? Or maybe you want to get a DARA table there, and I will be there and I can help out. So that would be greatly appreciated. And one of the things that does help, as we all know, in today's information and tech highways, that the more people that like, follow, and share the DARA Drug Addiction Resource Alliance Facebook page, the more likes you get, the more it's easier to search. So as silly as it sounds to say, hey, can you like us? Can you share it? Can you follow us? It is actually important for education and getting more credibility out there in cyberspace to make sure that when somebody searches it, it pops up right away. And they don't have to go to a second or third page to find what they're trying to do, especially if they're in a crisis situation and they need instant access to some resource to help save the loved one's life. So really important, and to get education. So at this point, I'd like to introduce, everyone knows Judge Duffy because everyone knows how passionate she is about this and what she's doing for our community. And again, Judge Duffy, thank you for all you're doing, and if you can take it from here.
I just want to introduce a few people who are here. Our commissioner from our county, Montgomery County, Joe Gale. And Joe will say a few words near the end. We have also one of my dearest friends who advertises DARA for us on his wonderful radio program, Clean and Sober Radio. He's also on the Pennsylvania Council for Drug and Alcohol. Gary Hendler said he'll be speaking next forum. And then one of my colleagues, I don't know where she is, but Magisterial District Judge Kate McGill. Thank you for being here. Is she still here? She was here. All right. Maybe she stepped. Maybe she could be still out there. All right. I want to make sure we all know that this forum is, in fact, dedicated to the memory of Michael Wilson, who's the son of our first speaker, retired Lieutenant Ray Wilson. Michael inspired me to form Drug Addiction Resource Alliance and to delve deeply into understanding addiction and to begin getting people into inpatient treatment right from the bench. That has always been my goal with DARA, and it has become, as we've all used the word, passion, because when I see people at the lowest court, I'm seeing people, right at their most raw form, when they really are asking for help, begging for help, and they need the help the most. So we really started DARA really around that concept of getting these contacts and these liaisons so that I can pick up the phone right from the bench and find a bed for someone who really needs it. And it's been working. And thanks to all these wonderful providers who are part of the DARA team and members, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I also want to mention who's going to be introducing one of our speakers, our wonderful President Judge, who is here tonight, Judge Del Ricci. There he is in the back. So we'll hear from him in just a moment. Also, we have, is Sage still here? There she, where was she? Sage, come on up here for a minute. This is Sage Prince. This beautiful photo was taken by Sage, and she's just going to tell you really quickly, because she doesn't really want to do this, why she chose that particular topic.
All right, so I'm a senior at North Penn. I'm currently taking AP Digital Photography, and one of the requirements for class last year was to make a public service announcement, and I chose drugs since it can affect everyday lives, and I want to make sure that people have access to help and treatment that they need/want.
Thank you. That was good. And I want to thank Floyd and Sue and everyone here at the Montgomery Township Community and Recreation Center. Again, also I wanted to mention real fast the website, darasaveslives.com. I'm so proud of what we just did and accomplished, because now if you go on that website and you click on the right-hand corner, DARA resource chart, you will see, based on the questionnaire we gave out to our members, what each facility provides, what services they provide, what insurances they take, what their intake process is, if they work with children, what their transportation situation, do they provide transportation, are they accessible by public transportation? It's really one-stop shopping, and I'm really proud of it because I think that's just what somebody needs. We want to always bring the mountain to Muhammad with people suffering with addiction, to make it as easy as possible for them to access the services they need. And this handy-dandy chart should really help and go a long way. And it's not just inpatient providers that are on there. We also have outpatient as well and therapists. And you're welcome to email me. I'll be glad to add you to our chart because we want to reach as many people as possible with the different kind of services that everyone has. I do want to thank my incredible staff too. I have one here tonight, Joanne. They are just wonderful. This is time consuming for me, and they put up with me. I'm really, really, really proud of them. Thank you. Also, I just mention a couple of helpers who are here: Greg Gilrain, John Pilkington, and Mark Resnick. I can never say it. Where is he? You know I never can say it. But Mark R. They're always here for me, and I always appreciate if you want to be part of, like we said, this team and doing some of the grunt work. I'm thrilled to have you. We're going to have our next forum hopefully in February. I'd love to have it here because everyone seems to really be thrilled with the facilities here. I know I'm a member here, but don't count on me working out too often because that just doesn't happen. But it is a beautiful place. We already have guest speakers lined up, and which proves to be, I think, a really wonderful night. It will be. All righty. Well, I think we're going to begin with a prayer now, if Donna Mangle can come up. I think we, as I say, every time we have a forum, I like starting with a prayer because we need all the help we can get.
That's absolutely true. Let's bow our head. Dear precious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for gathering us together. Lord, we thank you for the amount of abilities and talents and resources and the brain trusts that are found within this very room. We thank you for the legislators, the attorneys, the law enforcement agents, the vendors, the healthcare providers. We thank you for every individual in this room who is putting themselves out here this evening and being willing to help. Lord, we ask that you will scourge this disease from our land, from our county, from our towns, and most of all, Lord, we ask that you scourge it from our families. Lord, we know that our families are often victims in this situation, and it's easy to place blame on the addict and what the addict does to the homes. Lord, we ask that you will heal both the addict and the home that they come from, and the marriages be restored. We ask that their finances and their reputations and their dispositions and their overall mental health be brought about and around for a full healing from the top of their head to the sole of their feet. Lord, we ask all these things in your precious holy name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Donna. Donna's from Lamb Foundation, one of our DARA members. All right, our first speaker has become like family to me, the entire Wilson family. And like I said, this forum is in fact dedicated to his son. My life was changed. There's no doubt about it as I sat in Michael's memorial service. And he truly did inspire me to do more, as much as I can do in my position, to make a difference with this horrible epidemic. So I would like to introduce someone who has been with me since the first forum. He tells a very compelling story, and he is the retired lieutenant in Hatfield Township, and he also was our Safe Schools coordinator in North Penn School District. It is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Ray Wilson.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Tonight I want to tell you a little bit about my son, Michael Ryan Wilson. He died of a heroin overdose on March 21st, 2015 in Bucks County. Michael was a good kid. He was born September 20th, 1977, and he had a love for cars. He worked on cars pretty much since he was about 16 years old. And he started fixing neighbors' cars, and we always had people over at our house, and he had all the neighborhood kids were at the house, and he was fixing cars. And I always said that I don't know where he got that from, because I couldn't even change the oil on my car, so I don't know where he got that from. But he attended North Bonco Votech School while attending Saturnary High School. And then after that, he graduated from Northampton County Community College, and he got a degree in automotive technology. And Michael worked at various auto dealerships in Montgomery and Bucks County. And everybody that ever, that he crossed his path in his auto dealership said that Mike did a great job. He was very passionate about fixing cars. He did move around in a couple auto dealerships because of pay and different reasons. A lot of times car dealerships, if they had a slow, slow season, he would have to go to another car dealership. But every time I always met somebody, one of his bosses from his company said that he was just, a great worker. He met his first wife, Cindy. They were married in October of 2001. And probably what started this whole thing with Michael was that in sometime after they were married, in the middle of their marriage, he had a pretty bad motorcycle accident, and the doctor prescribed OxyContin. And I think Michael had what we call an addicted personality, and he started taking the OxyContins, and we could start to see a drop in his job performance, and there were some other issues, some different issues with his wife, and unfortunately they were divorced in 2006. But like I said, we saw a slow decline in Michael's health and his how he went about life. And my ex-wife and I tried to get him into some rehabs and things in these next years, and it seemed like he was doing much better. And he then met a girl, Angela, and they moved to Langhorne and ended up to be his fiance. And Michael and Angela had two beautiful kids, Ryan and Gianna. And they didn't have a lot of money, so they lived with her mother in Langhorne, and that didn't seem to go too well. She didn't treat Michael too well, and that didn't help his situation. And unfortunately, she eventually kicked him out of the house, and that really hurt him. And then again, he began a slow decline. Mike used to call me every day, and he would beg me for money, and he always told me that it was for food for him, to give money to his girlfriend and his kids for food. And I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess I kind of became an enabler. I was driving down the seedy streets in Philadelphia, and I was giving him money, and I learned later that he was using this money to buy heroin. And I don't know, I must have had the blinders on, but I guess my love for my son overtook my ability to say no to him. And Michael was a good-looking kid. He was just a great kid. He was a good-looking kid. And while I was driving down to Philadelphia to see him every once in a while, he was living in homeless shelters. I never in my wildest dreams ever thought my son would be living in a homeless shelter. But he kind of took a turn for the worse, and his condition deteriorated. He got be kind of skinny, and his teeth were rotting, and it just hurt me so bad to see him like this. His fiance's mother, they had been living with, obviously did not understand that Michael had a disease, and that's one thing that I learned through all this, that heroin addiction is a disease. That's exactly what it is. It's like cancer or any other disease. But she didn't understand that, and Michael apparently stole some jewelry from her. So she filed charges in Bucks County for some theft of some jewelry that she was missing, and unfortunately he was put in Bucks County prison. And I didn't really learn this till he was in there for a little while. But Mike spent 6 agonizing months in prison, and from what I gathered, he didn't get much in the way of rehab or rehabilitation in prison. And I think again, he would call me I had to use my credit card to, to put money in so he could call. And he just said, "Dad, please get me out of here. Please get me out of here." But it was out of my control. There wasn't really much that I could do about that. I tried to see if he was getting any kind of rehabilitation in prison, but it didn't seem like that was happening. But after 6 months, I finally did talk to his probation officer, and I said, "Mike's been a good kid in prison, right?" And he said, "Yes, he has." I said, "Can we let him out and go to a rehab or a halfway house or something?" So finally, in March of 2015, March 20th, he was released from Bucks County Prison, and his fiancee Angela and the 2 kids picked him up, and they got to spend the whole day with him, which now in hindsight was really nice. And they did take him to a halfway house in Langhorne. They dropped him. They spent the whole day with him. I think they were there till almost 11 o'clock at night, and they said goodbye to him when they left. At some point during the night, Michael left the halfway house. I don't know how this happened or what the circumstances were, but unfortunately, the next day on March 21st, 2015, I was at a relative's house in Lansdale, and I received the worst phone call of my life. That Mike was found dead in a known drug house in Pendle, Pennsylvania. Several weeks later, I received the coroner's report, and it was found that Mike died of an overdose of heroin that was laced with fentanyl. In the weeks and months that followed my son's death, I was in contact with the police detectives about possibly trying to charge the individual that gave Mike the fentanyl laced with heroin. But at that time, they had said that there was limited evidence or the laws to do this. I do know now that the laws have changed, and now that individuals that do supply these lethal doses can be charged and prosecuted. One of the major things that I personally learned about my son's death was that, again, that this addiction is a disease. And my biggest hope is that people will realize this and not treat people addicted to heroin as junkie street people, but someone who has a disease like any other cancer or similar disease. Like I said, I felt that I was a well-respected police officer, and my biggest fear at the time was wondering what people would think of me, that I had a heroin user as a son. But this disease affects all walks of life, all incomes, and a lot depends on whether you have an addictive personality. I'm so thankful. I wish I could be sitting in this audience today and trying to help my son, but it was just a little late. But I just am so thankful to my good friend Judge Andrea Duffy, who is on a mission to get people to help for their addiction instead of just throwing them in prison. That obviously did not help my son. But if any more lives can be saved through the help of judges, police, and healthcare officials, I would feel a little bit better that Michael's death was at least a little easier to take. In 6 months, we'll be coming up on Michael's 3-year anniversary. There's not a day, a minute, an hour that I don't think about him. Through Mike's deal with this addiction, he still managed to be the best son, father, brother that he could be. He loved his 2 children more than anything in the world. And I pray that when they get older, they will understand this, and I know they will. This disease can tear up your family. Donna said that in her prayer. It causes great strain on your family. And I have a lot of my family here tonight, and I just want to recognize that my brother Tim and sister-in-law Dana Wilson are here, and they were very helpful. They understood what Mike was going through. They talked with him a lot and even took him into their home for a little while. My brother-in-law, Mike Emlett, my sister's husband, is here tonight. Mike is actually a Christian counselor, and he was very helpful too. He tried to work with Mike, and he was very supportive of Mike. My daughter Mindy is here, and her husband Mike. And I know this disease caused my daughter and her brother to grow apart from the effects of this disease. And I know this bothers her very much. I know she wishes that she could have reached out to him a little bit more. Maybe the outcome would have been different. I'm not sure, but I know she. My wife Cindy is here, and she has been my rock through this whole process with Michael. Cindy knew how to talk to him. She had some prior experience with her job and some other things with addictive behavior. And she was always there to answer my questions. Sometimes I just couldn't find the answers to things, and she seemed to have the answers for me. I love you so much. Thank you. Heroin addiction is a disease, and the more people that realize and accept, the better the world will be. It's truly an epidemic, but thanks to forums like this and education and new laws, we will hopefully beat this someday. I have to try to end this my story on a little bit of a funny note, but Mike used to always, every time you talk to Mike, he used to always end a conversation by saying these words, "You know what I mean?" Like he would be on the phone and say, "Hey Dad, can I come over for dinner tonight? You know what I mean?" Or, "Hey Dad, can I do this? You know what I mean?" He just had this bad habit, so it's kind of funny, like when Mindy or Cindy and we're talking, sometimes they'll say, "You know what I mean?" I go, "What did you just say?" Isn't that what Mike used to say? But Mike, I know you're listening up there. We all love you very much. We miss you. And you know what I mean. Thank you for coming tonight and listening to my son's story. And Andrea, thank you from the bottom of my heart for dedicating this forum to Michael. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ray, once again for being here for me and for everyone. Well, we have a story of recovery next. Julie's here, Julie Saris, and she is my neighbor, and she also was in my court, not as a spectator, but as a participant. The story didn't end badly. The story ended beautifully. So, Julie Saris, I'm so thrilled to have you here to speak tonight. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for that introduction, and I will get to that part. So really, I just wanted to come tonight to share with everyone my personal story of recovery. And I'm not going to go into every little detail, because if I did, we'd be here for a very long time, and it'd get really sad before it got happy. So I'd really just like to kind of pinpoint a couple significant moments throughout my life and just kind of give an understanding of where I was, kind of what happened, and then where my life is today. So I'll start by saying that my sobriety date is October 27th of 2013. So this October I will be, God willing, celebrating 4 years sober. Thank you. I clap for myself sometimes too on that. Growing up, I grew up in Lansdale, had a great family. I had loving parents who are here today to support me. I was not in a situation where I ever had anything to complain about. I had everything that I needed, most everything that I wanted, except for a puppy. You can ask them, I still talk about it. Still on the wish list, maybe one day. But I did. I had a great life. I was involved in sports, extracurricular activities. I had an older brother who picked on me the way older brothers should, and we get along great today. But somewhere along the lines, I didn't feel right. So I can tell you that around 3rd or 4th grade, I had this weird feeling of separation. And I can't tell you exactly where it came from because I have no idea. I just know that I would sit on the bus and I felt like I couldn't carry a conversation. Being in 3rd grade, you'd think that you could talk about anything. My Little Pony, whatever it was. There were tons of things that people were talking about I just didn't want to. And at that point, it didn't really make much sense to me, so I sort of just carried on. And that feeling progressively got worse as I got older. I had my first drink when I was in 7th grade, which I believe is 13 years old. And I can tell you that I didn't understand it, but I loved it. For the first time in my life, I felt comfortable in my own skin. I felt like I was not being judged, and I didn't have to second guess every step that I took. Being 13, it was not easy to get access to alcohol, so it's not like it happened all the time. However, I tried to find ways to make it happen as much as I could. I started to try to maneuver my way into being friends with older kids, kind of just supplementing wherever I could. Continue on, let's fast forward to high school, where I got in a relationship with someone who was a little bit older, who had an older brother who could supply alcohol, and this guy liked to drink as well. At this point, it took me to the point where I was drinking almost every day, if not every day, towards the end of high school. It was either skipping school so I could drink, drinking after school, or drinking during school. It didn't really matter. I just felt like I needed it in order to be okay. I didn't talk to many people. I wasn't real outgoing. I was on the soccer team, and I loved that. But as I went into it, the drinking and the drug use started to play a big factor in that. And I will say it was not fun. I did not drink and have a great time and go out to parties. I drank alone in my room because I was sad and lost. And at this point, I just didn't really understand how to get out of it. I was in my senior year when it started to, that weight came on. And I could feel it, and I knew things were bad. I didn't understand why or how or what I needed to do. So it got to the point where a couple days before my birthday, it was actually the day before our senior trip to Disney, I felt like I could not take it anymore, so I attempted to kill myself by driving a car into a tree. Thank God that did not work, but I can tell you that the day that I woke up in the hospital, I was very upset. I didn't want to be alive anymore because I didn't want to continue to live my life the way that I was, but I didn't know how to stop. So from there, things got a little bit more hectic. Home life became very uncomfortable for everyone. It was always like walking on eggshells, I think, for myself and, for my family members. It was that very awkward tension, and it became time to decide whether or not to go to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I decided to go to college. So I went to Temple University, which is in Philadelphia, and was a very convenient location for my drug use. So I did not go to a lot of classes, and the ones I did go to, I was not sober for. So that did not last very long. I think I was there for about a year and a half before I left that school. I moved back home and got my first DUI. I got ARD, so it was pretty cool. I was like, well, kind of blew that one away, and now I can continue on doing what I'm doing anyway. And at this point, I've started to do some of those rehab after work programs and counseling, but I had no desire to stop, so I didn't. And I moved out of my parents' house and into a house that was a bunch of people who liked to live the way I did. And during that time, things really started to go downhill. The drug use got heavier and the alcohol started to take a back seat. And the person who owned the house that I rented from was my drug dealer. A couple months into that, that individual told me I needed to leave, which you'd think would be a sign. If the person that's giving you the drugs is telling you you have a problem, you might want to consider having a problem. But I thought that they were absolutely insane, so I kind of, okay, see you later, I'm going to continue to do what I do best. From there, it was a lot of couch hopping, and I got my second DUI. This time I had 4 friends of mine in the car with me, and I hit a car with 2 other people in it. Totaled my car. The person I was staying with at that point then told me I could no longer stay with them. And it really started to hit me that, something might be wrong here. So I remember making a phone call to my parents, asking if I could come back and stay there until the court date, because at this point I knew I was going to go to court. Second DUI, there's probably going to be some consequences. So I went back home, started doing a little bit of AA, but it was more 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out, kind of just trying to get by. I did receive a 90-day sentence with work release. So again, I kind of sort of got away with off the hook. I was able to leave the jail for a couple hours almost every day, go to work, come back. It was 3 months that wasn't fun, but it also wasn't that bad, at least not in my brain. I tell you, after that sentence is where things for me changed rapidly. There was a 4-month period after that where the heroin addiction became very strong. I was living in someone's basement, had no job, had no life really, and everything was about getting high again. This is when I really started to engage in those activities that, you kind of hear the stigma about. Lying, cheating, stealing, kind of whatever I could do to get what I needed next. And exactly 4 months to the day of the time I was released from jail the first time, I got arrested. We got pulled over for having a taillight out, and I was in the car with 2 other individuals who did not get arrested. And I remember crying. I was bawling my eyes out in the back of that cop car, and not because I was afraid that I was going to jail, but because I was afraid to live my life without getting high for however long I was going to be there. I was absolutely terrified, and I had no idea how to wrap my brain around it. So fast forward a little bit, you'd think now, okay, she's arrested, she's learned. I did not. I found someone in that facility to get something from. So 30 days into it, I got caught doing that. And this was really a defining moment for me. I don't know if it was the warden or exactly who he was. It's all a little bit blurry, to be totally honest, but he came out after I had gotten caught with this use and was yelling at me. And there was an older woman in the vicinity who you could tell she had been using drugs for quite some long time. And he stood her in front of me and looked me in the eye and said, "Is that what you want to be? Is that how you want your life to look 10 years from now if you make it that far?" And then he sent me to the hole for 30 days. And it was 30 days of time to really think, which at the time was really awful. It was a lot of regret, self-hate. I couldn't understand how I had gotten to where I had gotten. There was not a day in time where I woke up and said, I think I'm gonna go be an addict. Let me ruin every relationship, destroy people's lives because I wanna go do this. It just sort of happened, and I didn't know how to get out of it. But during that 30 days, I decided it was time to make a change. So I wrote a letter to my parents, again asking for forgiveness and help. And I said, I'll do anything. I will do whatever you need me to do. I'll go to rehab, whatever. So that being said, I have great parents who worked on that for me. Unfortunately, there was a rough spot with getting into a rehab based on the fact that I had been clean for 30 days. And like I said, luckily I have parents who actually went and fought for that. And I got into a rehab. So I spent 30 days in Clearbrook and Wilkes-Barre, spent another 4 months in a halfway house after that, and another 6 months in a recovery house after that. And it was a long process. And there were not always easy days. Some of it was incredibly painful, and there were days where I didn't know if I was making the right choice, and days I didn't know if I'd be able to face myself and to face the people that I'd hurt in the past. So fast forward just a little bit more so I don't run too much time here. So after all that, I ended up getting a part-time job for Panera making sandwiches. I am still with that company today. I have a great mentor there who's also my boss, who's also joined us today to support me. And he's coached me and guided me with a lot of things that I don't think I'd be able to get through if it weren't for him being in my life, and it's gotten me to a point where I'm now in management. And I joke because my dad was in food management, and I always said I will never do that. And then I called him and told him I was going to do that. So it's fun because we can relate that now. And there's just so much that I would never change about my life today. Not all of it is easy, and there are so many days where, I just kind of want to curl up in a ball and cry, but I don't want to curl up in a ball and get high. And to me, that's the change. And I tell people that I am recovered, and there's a lot of controversy around that, but I say that because I've recovered from that hopeless state of mind. I no longer wake up hating myself. I no longer wake up wanting to hide from the world. I get scared, but I face it instead of run. And I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the programs that got me here. The rehab, the halfway house, every step of it. While I hated it at some moments, it impacted my life to the point where I can't imagine it being any other way. So I just want to say thank you all for being here and supporting the process, and thank you for asking me to speak tonight.
I also want to thank another colleague that has arrived, Judge Greg Scott, for being here. This is his second forum, and I really do appreciate the support from my colleagues. And I really do appreciate the support of a lot of my friends and neighbors, and just people in the community that have supported this program. I'm so grateful. I only hope that we can continue to grow and help more people every day. That is my goal. Every day in court, I do see an addict. I'm waiting for the day that I don't. I'm praying for that day. It just never happens. And, you know, people don't think in Montgomery County Township and Hatfield Township, my two areas, that we have that much in the way of drug possession and drug use and drug dealing, but we do. And just the fact that I have the speakers that I do should be absolute proof that it's alive and well here, right amongst us. So I'm really thrilled to also now introduce someone who's going to introduce our next speaker. Judge Del Ricci is our president judge. We expect to have him for another 10 years. He's up for retention, and of course he's going to win. So we are going to have him for a while, and we're really thrilled to have him. And he's very close to our next speaker, so I thought he would be the best person to give her a warm welcome.
Good evening. It's a great honor to be here. What we learned today as I sit in this room is the message that keeps being said, that education and awareness are the keys to fighting this terrible epidemic that we fight, and how the scene has changed in the years since I became a judge. In 1997, when I was elected a judge, we had a whole different approach to drug and alcohol and mental illness awareness. It was called put them in jail and hope it works out. And this is what we learned. We learned that we couldn't build jails fast enough. And we learned that was just bad policy. And over the years, we've become better. And unfortunately for judges who were not trained to be social service workers, we've now taken the place of social service agencies that have sometimes failed, that can't keep up with the demand, because young men and women come before us as defendants, and what they really need is help. They don't need a jail cell. And we found that by attacking the root causes of crime, it was a win all around. And if you look around this room, you'll see that we have all sorts of people here who understand that now. One of my partners, the commissioner of Montgomery County, probation officers, judges, law enforcement agencies. What we learned is that by serving and addressing root causes, it's good for the community, it makes economic sense, and it makes our community safer, and we save people's lives. Now, that's my commercial about the courts, and our courts are working every day to secure more and more resources to attack root causes of crime and make our communities safer. Now, we still have to address crime. I mean, this is not a hug-a-thug program that we have in our courts. It's about attacking those individuals who are evil and understanding those people who need help. And we can make that distinction, and by doing so, we can make a difference. Now, everyone, as I said, plays a role, but I have a special honor tonight. You know, as you go through life, sometimes you come across special people, and you know they're special the moment you meet them. They're heroes, they're epic, and you know that immediately in your heart. You're in awe of these people. That's how I felt the first time I met your next speaker, my friend Lori Besden. I remember that night. She probably doesn't remember it as well as I do. But we were at a dinner together. She didn't know who I was, really. She had known of my name, and I didn't really know who she was, although I had heard of her name. And we were talking about a friend of mine whose life she was part of saving. Someone I knew, one of my closest friends, whose life had spiraled in a way that it shouldn't have spiraled. And here I was, the big scary judge of Montgomery County, bawling my eyes out with this woman, as she gave me hope and filled me with inspiration. That night, Lori Beston became my hero. Now, I can give you a lot of bio on Lori, okay? Because there's a lot of bio on Lori. Her business card says, Executive Director, Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. What it should say is, Lori Beston, Saver of Lives, because that's who she is. Lori has a very special story, which she's going to share with you tonight. It starts with addiction and continues to this very day, saving life after life. No one does more outreach and education. Believe me when I tell you, she answers calls 24 hours a day across this Commonwealth, and at the drop of the hat, will get in some car that has some 200,000 miles on it, okay, and drive across this state to help a lawyer or a judge who is in crisis or a family member. Her story has been featured in the New York Times. They've actually made a movie, educational movie about it. It's inspirational. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to know the person I know, my hero, Lori Beston.
Wow, I am truly humbled with that introduction. I'm going to try not to cry. Thank you so much.
I'll cry for you.
Okay, deep breath. Before I get started, I have brought my mom with me, who is going to start our section off by reading a letter that she wrote to me in my addiction. Just as a little background, it was probably the absolute worst time in my addiction, and I remember she gave it to me, and I remember I was completely annoyed that she was making such a big deal out of this situation, and I felt she was just trying to get sympathy from everybody and put it on paper and then shared it with people to let them know how much she cared. So now I read the letter when I present across the state, and I can't even keep it together. So good luck with that.
Thank you, honey. Dear Lori, there are so many things that I need to say to you. First and foremost, know that I love you. A parent's love is constant. My heart is heavy with an ache for you and what you are going through now, but know that I do love you. I love the child who would do anything to please anybody, a child who would decorate my car on the night before my birthday just to surprise me, a loving and giving young woman who would get together so many gifts for friends at Christmas. I love the child and the woman who makes me laugh, whether it be jokes about us or anyone else in our family. Deep, hearty laughs like no one else can make us laugh. I remember back to a young girl with the tendencies to be compulsive about boys, getting away with things, and always getting into trouble. I remember a young girl headed into trouble. I always felt that you were a little bit different. So much more caring than other children, so loving and so anxious to always test. I remember when you and your sister Jody were living at home, and I hid all the prescription medicines inside of Jody's ski boot. So even back then, I knew that you would take things that you should not touch. Since you were almost born, you had trouble sleeping at night always. When the rest of the world slept, you were awake. I remember you laughing at us for paying to get you psychological help. Even at the youngest age, you were manipulating people. We took you to an MD to help you, and you refused to even speak with her. I remember knowing in my heart that you were a slave to drugs long before I allowed myself to think that it could possibly be true. The way your mind races, your inability to sit and eat with anyone, I knew years before I admitted that I did. I know you thought that rehab was another way to manipulate. It made you legitimate. You had a problem that lots of people had. You have the potential to do anything that you want. You are beautiful, and I love you for what you will one day be again. I pray to God that that will happen. I have tears coming down my cheeks as I am typing this to you. A mother never loses her love for her child. You are a gift from God. Laurie, no one can fix things for you anymore. It has to come from you and you alone. You need to look in the mirror and see the help that you need to find for yourself. No one can help you. We can support your effort, but it must come from you. There is no need or reason to reiterate what happened. I heard it all from Adrian, all about the white Mercedes pulling up and the transaction that followed. You can deny it all you want, but what difference does that make now? You need to get yourself off the poison in your body and the psychological help to get you back on track. At one point, you said you were going to go to Dr. Johnson. I actually think he's wonderful, but the ball is in your court now. You're the only one who can make yourself better. I miss you. I miss you at family dinners. I miss the joking and the teasing. I know you're in pain, and I feel I can't reach across to touch you. Know that your pain is my pain also. Without you in my life, I am experiencing a loss that hurts more than I thought I could ever hurt. Dad thinks you have a love-hate relationship with me. I know better. You're in a difficult place now, and I understand. You're living with Dad, and there is not a reason in the world that you should ever have to choose. You're an adult, but you need to be honest with him. He needs to know how you were hurting. Remember how we used to joke about God? Well, believe it or not, I have prayed to him every single day that you will come back to me and you will be whole again. You are part of who I am, and I will love you forever. Love, Mom.
Thank you for reading that. Whew, heaviness. First, I want to thank Judge Duffy for this forum. I also want to express my sincere condolences to you and your family. I know how lucky I am. I do, and that's why anytime I'm asked to speak, whether it means driving 8 hours, I will do it because, but for the grace of God, my mom could be in your chair. Last night I was actually speaking to a friend of mine who's in this room, and I'm going to point out in a second. And we were her and I were in jail together, and we were talking about another inmate, Jennifer Pennington, who was in and out of jail 4 times in the 1 year that I was there. We had plans to see each other after she left, and in fact, the prior speaker was talking about being in the hole. I'm so grateful I had an ink pen, and we were put in the hole together for 3 days. I got to know her, we laughed, I learned about her children. I only knew her clean, I only knew her in jail. And one of those people that I was pretty sure I would stay in touch with, assuming that I and she both stay clean. She got out of jail sometime December of '05, and her unborn child died January 31st, 2005, from a drug-related death. And so anytime that I'm asked to speak, I do that because I feel that I have an obligation. It's a privilege, but in honor of those that can't do it, and didn't make it. And we've all done our best. Some of us make it, some of us don't. But for those of us that don't, that's why I'm here. I feel my mission in life, and I say this, I mean, I stand here as a person in recovery. I'm not going to ask people to raise their hand, but I think I'm in a room of majority of people in recovery. I'm getting a lot of smiles right now. 10% of the U.S. population is in recovery, 20 million folks. I am just one of them. I am not unique. I just happen to know Judge Duffy, and she was kind enough to ask me to speak to you. But I believe those of us that stand in recovery have an obligation to pay it forward. The greatest thing is we have the choice to determine what the it is. I have dedicated my life, and I'm not holier than thou, trust me, I'm not, to doing everything I can to help people suffering from addiction, mental health, and in fact, I've added animals to my platform. In fact, just today, we started a filming regarding animals. I'll get to that. So before I even get started, I want to thank you, Judge Del Ricci, for your wonderful introduction, but more so for your passion. It's very, I don't want to say infrequent, but to have individuals that are so passionate about helping people and saving lives that they literally jump in and create a platform to help other people. What I do for a living, I can just simplify this. We only had a lawyer's assistance program in Pennsylvania until 2013. In no uncertain terms, Judge Del Ricci and a former justice on the Supreme Court were instrumental. Those two individuals made this happen to create a specialized track just for judges concerned for judges. And when I tell you the number of people we're reaching, because judges may have an issue or a family member, or they're trying to help an attorney that's before them, that's because of Judge Del Ricci. And that's huge, what he did for our profession and for all of us, because we're all members of society. Yeah, that's huge. He's so humble, he won't even look me in the eye now. You would think that was not the county that sent me to jail for a year. It was, and he was there when that happened. I also wanted to take a moment and point out my friend that I was communicating with last night about Jennifer, and again, obviously, I'm so sorry. I wish Jennifer was here tonight, and she, her story wasn't what it was, but because of her, we'll go forward in her memory. But my friend AJ, who's over there, if you could just raise your hand. Yeah. AJ and I met in jail, and she was one of the first people who I remember sitting with and being like, wow, like there's like normal people in jail. Yeah, it's the same people who I am, right? Where else would they come from? And we would sit there and we would talk, and it wasn't about like jail or what was going on in jail, and I thought to myself, like, she's a real true friend. And our lives, I was released, she was released. I want to point out, I'm going to share my story. I come from a life of privilege. I always had family there willing to throw money, whether it was education or rehabs. And, I'm not saying that AJ didn't have a very loving family, because she did. Her sobriety date is 10/31/2006. Yeah, that's huge. And I think the most remarkable thing, besides that she got her children back, is today she works in the mental health field, giving back the gift that was so freely given to her. And that's what we do in recovery. We recover. And to fight, she fought harder than anyone I know to get what she has. And I'm so incredibly proud of you, really. And it's such an honor to see you tonight. The team that actually saved my life are all here. I didn't think it at the time. Judge Carpenter is not here. It's his anniversary, so we gave him the night off. Lynn Truskowski, who's trying to take a picture right now, is my former parole officer. She actually used to come into, that would be my mom's phone, come into the law firm with her parole jacket on, and I was on intensive parole, and she would come in, I think it was once a week. And the truth is, she actually taught me how to live. First of all, I was scared to death of her. which was a really good thing because it worked out well. But I mean, even how to rotate my gym shoes, like rotate shoes for the gym and then where they go to everyday wear, I still do that. So, I mean, literally, you helped save my life, and I consider you a dear friend, and I love you to pieces. Rick Wilson was Lynn's supervisor. Now, I don't know much about the county. Obviously, I was in the system, and I was not an employee. But, I mean, I know that they don't pay parole, probation, and supervisors to travel to visit people. I know that. Maybe to your office to get a urine sample. But so after I spent time in jail, I went to the Karen Foundation, and within a week of me getting there, they said, well, you know, someone from Montgomery County Parole and Probation is coming up here to have lunch with you. And I'm like, oh, is this standard? And I remember Rick came and he sat down, and I just remember being like, wow, am I special or is this normal? Like I was blown away, and to this day I still remember that conversation. And from the bottom of my heart, I just really felt like you really cared to see me succeed. It wasn't, you're gonna get drug tested every week. It was, we care and what can we do to help you? And your dedication to those in recovery is really, truly without parallel. I've never seen anything like it besides Judge Del Ricci. So thank you so much. And then Renee Fitzko, she was my probation officer who's sitting next to Rick. And she, I don't know, it was a couple years. And she would come in to the firm. She didn't need to wear the parole jacket, but and she came in, and I mean, I developed a friendship with these people. But the truth is, the people sitting in that row showed me how to live and actually taught me that people cared. It wasn't, when I was not clean and sober and I was on probation, I'm like, they just want to stick me in jail. And that was completely not the case. So, you know, and I have two other friends here, Rachel and John, who work for our primary purpose. I won't make you raise your hand, but the bottom line is, like Judge Del Ricci was saying, I run and help people 24/7. So do those people, and not for the legal profession, for anybody. I've seen threads where people said, I need a bed, and they say, call us. It doesn't matter what time it is. And it's people like that that get sober and give back that help the percentages increase. So thank you guys so much for your service work. With that being said, and also, it was a nice surprise. Part of what I do for work is I speak at the law schools. And tonight, the Dean of Students of Penn Law has joined us. And I appreciate you coming out here and doing that, and is so invested in recovery and getting help, whether it's her students or whoever. Any message of hope that we can give, they're very, like, door is open, please come in and do what you need to do. So I'm going to share my recovery story. I did actually write some things down. I speak often, but usually I speak to the legal community. So I did write some things down because I just want to make sure that I remember to say them. I am definitely not proud of my behavior and my addiction. Some of it is so vile and disgusting. Some of it I've never even shared publicly, but it's all out there one way or another. So I grew up, again, my mom's here, so I have to, you know, curb it a little bit. I grew up in an awesome house. I grew up in a very loving family. I say it every time I speak. I thought my parents were very happily married, extremely happily divorced today. I have one sister. Well, I grew up with one sister, 3.5 years older than me. And we grew up in Plymouth Meeting. Before we were even born, whether it was grandparents or whoever, they knew we were going to be a lawyer and a doctor. That's what was going to happen. So I kind of threw a little wrench into the plan. But first taste of any, and I say this, and this is totally a true statement, no disrespect to Metallica, I thought a drug addict was a guy with long hair and a Metallica shirt. I truly, really thought that. So I grew up like clueless. You know, we grew up with a beach house in Margate because everyone I knew had them. I thought it was like a 2-for-1 deal. Overnight camps, and I mean, it's just the truth. We grew up with everything we wanted and needed. First taste of anything, age 8, went to the dentist, routine dental cleaning. They gave me nitrous, loved it. I still find it hard to believe people don't love nitrous, but not gonna ask for hands. And I would love going back there. I'm like, 6 months, why do I have to wait 6 months for dental cleaning? Dentist, not so fun today. Age 12, you were saying you started drinking age 13, and you hear that and you're like, that's crazy. Yeah, age 12, my best friend and I thought it'd be a great idea. Have an older friend drop off 6-packs of beer. ... Middle of the night, 2 a.m., Plymouth Township, half-dressed, maybe half-dressed, drunk, walking around the neighborhood. Cops pick us up. We go to the police station. All 4 parents come. It was Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. And I remember being in the hallway with my parents and tried to pin the whole thing on Shelby. I'm like, it was her idea. She's a bad influence. I think my parents honestly thought that for like 20 years. And Shelby's now a pharmacist and not addicted to drugs. No resentment there. And so that was age 12. High school was kind of uneventful. I was the kid that you always got in trouble with, stealing my parents' car. I mean, just duping my sister's license. That's never even made a story. It's so not even like up there on the list of insane things I did. And so time for college, my sister decides she's going to Penn State. And again, family's so invested in our education, they paid for everything. And I just say that because truly until I got into recovery, it was probably the first thing in my life I ever had to work for that was not handed to me. And so she went to Penn State. I decided, because I always felt like I was compared to her, with all due respect. So I decided I'm going to go to University of Maryland, College Park. Can't go apples to apples, throw an orange in there. And ironically, I wanted to work for the FBI. I'm sure they're glad they didn't take me. And so I was criminology, criminal justice major. All my family, especially my grandparents, cared about was grades. Every time I talked to them, how are you doing? So I graduated in 3.5 years, 3.97. Awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. However, I was living in a suite with 6 girls, and me and my best friend would get a case of beer Thursday nights. She's still my best friend today. And we would start drinking in the shower. I thought it was time management. She did the same thing. That's true. I mean, right. I never drank a soda in the shower. And so we would go out, we'd be so drunk, and ironically, I had an internship with parole and probation on Friday mornings. Ironic, because I ended up on parole and probation. And I would be so drunk that I would actually line the corner stall in the bathroom with paper towels and lay down and try to nap off my hangover where people are giving urine samples. However, 3.97 in 3.5 years. And Kathleen, my best friend, now works for Homeland Security, not in recovery. So it was about this time, and I thought that was normal because my grades are good. What could the problem be? So my sister, thank God, was now in medical school. That worked out. And so we had a family meeting. We had a lot of those family meetings. Laurie, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I said that I wanted to go to cosmetology school. And my family said, that is great. How about you go to law school first? And then you can go to cosmetology school. The funny thing is now I need a governor's pardon to go to cosmetology school, which I have filed. So I had an extra semester in between college and law school. I volunteered with the Philadelphia Children's Project in North Philly, 9th in Indiana. Like 15 of us would go down, take computers, give them out to people in homes that couldn't afford them. And I remember actually being like nervous. It was a rough neighborhood. Forward to my addiction, I would go into the exact same neighborhood, middle of the night, by myself, not an ounce of fear on me. And that's the insidious nature of addiction. So law school starts. I go to Dickinson, and everyone's like, I want to be a trial attorney. And I'm just like, I want to cut hair. And so, I hear my prior director, who had this position before me, he came, he shared his story in law school, LSD, and I was like, wow, he really ruined his life. Funny, I have his job now. And gave statistics, in the legal profession, and 1 in 3 of you, if not you, look to the left, look to the right, and I'm like, does this guy not know that we're in law school? Like, I can't even believe we have to listen to this. It was mandatory, and then there was a keg in the curtilage right after. So I didn't think anything about it. I carry on in law school, maintained a top 15%. Second year of law school, I went to Miami with a guy that I was dating, and it was New Year's. Somebody pulled out ecstasy, and I don't know why, but I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, somebody pulled out ecstasy. And she's like, oh, I'm so proud of you, honey. I know you'll do the right thing. Hung up the phone. I did it. Never called her again on a drug call. I don't even know why I wasted your time. Sorry about that. And the next day I said to the guy I was with, I really think we should get some of that and bring it back to law school. And he's like, why would we do that? And I didn't understand why he was thinking we wouldn't do that. Like, and kind of like the prior speaker was saying, whether it was nitrous, whatever it was, made me feel comfortable in my own skin. My clothes fit better. What I was saying was important. And that's what drugs and alcohol do to us people in recovery. It makes us comfortable in our own skin until we can deal with life on life's terms. So that was second year of law school. Third year of law school, I am in a car accident coming back from not a Metallica concert, but a Pearl Jam concert. And I was the passenger of my own car, alcohol involved. We drove right into the guardrail. Minor injury on my leg. I go to the emergency room, and they gave me 20 to 30 pain pills. And I realized it wasn't the first time I had pain pills, but it was the first time I had them and I didn't need them. So they gave me basically a surge of energy to sit and focus and study, not a normal reaction to drugs. It was obviously treating an untreated ADHD is really what was going on, but I didn't know that. So I thought, well, this is a really great way to get through finals. These pills make me study and focus. And so I decided plan A, I think I made it to plan L, but plan A was I am going to take these through finals, go to the emergency rooms, and then I'm done. So I started doing that. I'm a law student, I'm legit. I actually, as naive as this is, did not believe that I could get a drug problem. Like I caught it somewhere, right? And so here I went 100 miles an hour straight into a drug addiction that I did not believe that I could have. And so I went to all the ERs in the Carlisle area, law books, told them I tried Motrin and codeine, so I backed them right into the corner of what I wanted. They would x-ray me. It was like a 5-hour ordeal. So it was then almost time for finals, and a gentleman said, call this doctor in Texas. He'll prescribe 100 for refills. I called the doctor the next day, debilitating back pain, no longer leg problems. Next day, 100 of these pain pills show up. Signature required overnight. You can't do it like that now. And so I thought, well, okay, well, overnight, my access just completely increased. I'm now going to take them through finals. I did. Graduated top 15% in my class. And I remember my grandparents were there. They were so proud, lawyer, doctor, everything's going according to plan. And I remember going in the bathroom at my graduation in my apartment, counting the pills I had, and taking extra pills because I knew I was going to be irritated by my family that day. I was already completely addicted and was the last one to get the memo about it. By the time graduation happened, by the time I took Pennsylvania and New Jersey bar exams, it's not an exaggeration, we just do not want to be here all night. I was taking 3 pain pills an hour to get through the exam. I was wearing doctor's scrubs for all 3 days of the exam. Recently I ran into a classmate and he's like, I was wondering why you did that. And I'm like, well, I wish somebody would have told me at the time. Like, I don't know what I was doing. And I literally had the pills in my pocket and took 3 out per hour. Should not be proud to say, but I did pass both bar exams and had a trip. And then again, now I'm on plan B. So I've been taking these pills, 3 to 4 identities, same doctor, through the bar exam. Now I'm going to Spain and Africa with the guy I'm dating. Same guy, living with him, has no idea I'm on drugs. I decided I'm going to take what I have with me. We go to Spain. Second day there, I call in a refill from a payphone in Spain. I still think I have this whole thing under control. I ended up flying home solo because I had a clerkship that started. So Paris to JFK ran out of drugs. Thought I caught something overseas. Had no idea what was wrong with me. Get home. Mom said, a package came for you. Gave it to me. I went upstairs, opened it. Pills. Took 3. Completely fine. And I thought, I'm home in Plymouth meeting. Whatever it was, it's gone. Had no idea. So unfortunately, the addiction didn't stop there. I had a clerkship lined up on the Superior Court of Pennsylvania for a former Supreme Court justice for a 1-year clerkship, and that started in August. By December, and it's not an exaggeration, 40 pain pills a day to function, 9 identities, same doctor, drugs delivered to chambers, signature required. Sometimes I was there, sometimes I was not. I told the staff, there were 3 secretaries and 2 other law clerks, me, my dog, my family, everyone was on these vitamins. I mean, the story was preposterous. And so one day I called the pharmacy in Texas, whatever identity, and they said, oh, your doctor, he's been suspended. About time. my doctor treating my 9 identities from Texas. And so at that point, I made a decision. I was in a drug addiction. I still, believe it or not, thought I had control over this, to start calling in my own prescriptions. I don't think I missed many pharmacies from Collegeville. That was my first arrest, to Margate, New Jersey. Quantity of 100 for refills. In America, that does not happen, but that's what I did because that's what I was used to getting. And so I fueled the rest of that clerkship. My tolerance skyrocketed because I had access. I was calling them in whenever I needed them. Added Ambien and Xanax to the mix. Every hour that I was awake was controlled by drugs. Still thought I had control over this. Thank God for the court that was only a 1-year clerkship. So after that, I had another clerkship lined up on the municipal court in Philadelphia for 3 judges. And in the beginning, I got together with a friend from college, and she was going to get that great drug ecstasy that I loved. And when I got to her place, she pulled out cocaine. And I remember thinking, now that is a serious drug, like as if the drugs I'm calling in myself is not a problem. And I thought about it for about 2 seconds, and I did it, and I literally did not put that drug down until my freedom was taken from me. It was about, I went from, it's not this height and weight. Drugs are very strong, but it did not change my height. This weight to about 110 pounds in less than 2 months on cocaine. At this time, my mom contacted the one judge I was clerking for and said I needed help. Obviously, I'm like, I'm going to rehab. So I was on a 4-day cocaine bender, and I figured, I knew I was going to rehab. So you don't eat on cocaine, and so I decided I was going to stop at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not trying to be funny. 12 donuts, 45 munchkins. I show up to rehab with like a luggage of donuts, and they're doing the intake, and then they go to take my weight, and they said, can you turn around? Why am I turning around? Because you're at an eating disorder facility. And I'm like, I don't have an eating disorder. They watch me eat every morsel of food that I brought and then refuse to take me. And every time I speak, I say to people, it's so important if you're concerned about somebody not to diagnose them. Because the truth is, we never know what's wrong with people. Self-medication is a huge thing. So they let me go, and I wreaked havoc on the Commonwealth for another 2.5 years. After that clerkship, I don't even remember it. I don't even know if I finished it. I have no idea. At this point, did nothing with my law license. I was living in my dad's basement, basically. My parents were split up. I was playing one against the other. And there's a couple of things, and I'm not trying to romanticize addiction. I'm just to say how low it got. And I was just saying this to my mom, it's gross, but anyone who's in recovery, I'm sure, can relate. There would be times I would take so many pills that I would actually throw up. And if the pills had not dissolved, I would actually pick the pills out, and there's people nodding their head, pick them out and take the drugs again. And I just said that to my mom the other day, and she's like, now that is disgusting, you did that? And I'm like, that was not even the bottom. I mean, not even close. It got to a point where I was literally in my dad's house, 3 days, 4 days, cocaine bender, the sun's coming up, I'm still awake, and I see those people outside going to a job, walking a dog, like having a job to go to. And it was like, at that point, I would just stare out and think, I would do anything to wake up and go to any job. Like a dog would be a bonus, but any job, and I truly thought at that point, the only way I was getting out of it was in a casket. And that's honest to God what I thought. I would stay awake at night and handwrite my will. It's funny because I had nothing. I had a dog. And I would handwrite where I wanted the dog to go because I really felt if I closed my eyes, I wouldn't wake up. And I found a lot of those when I got sober. There was a point between 2002 and 2004, I was arrested 5 times, 4 felony prescription fraud, 1 for DUI. The DUI, I was under the influence of cocaine. I fell asleep while I was driving. It's hard to do that on that drug. That's how long I've been awake. The worst part of that is I was actually, I don't even know how this came about. I was taking care of a paraplegic and was hiding the cocaine at my dad's house and ran out of cocaine. And I thought I could ration my portion and decided I would leave the paraplegic home by himself and go drive and get the cocaine. And I caused a huge accident. And then had a neighbor pick me up, and I drove the car that was all smashed back to this guy's house and acted like nothing happened. That's where my addiction took me. There was times I took care of my mom after surgery. She had OxyContin. I didn't know any better. I was so coked out that I tried to snort Oxycontin, and I didn't even know you're supposed to, like, I'd literally just put the whole pill up my nose. And the good thing is I never did that again because I couldn't even get it out. I was the person, I was court ordered to rehab twice. The second time I thought I would be genius. I would sew pills in the pillow that I was taking and then switch out the pillowcase. I got the pills in. That lasted about 10 hours. And then I was like, well, I didn't think about this plan really well. And I mean, I was that person, you know, and I was even, got to a point in my addiction, my dad needed glucovance. I was just calling in whatever he needed. He never asked, who's Ed Dale? Who's this and where do these 90 pills come from? I was just completely out of control. So 5 arrests later, I remember Judge Carpenter, my first arrest, you know, was kind of trying to work with me. We're going to see how you do. ... January 29, 2004 is my sobriety date. At that point, it was second violation, new charges. And I had told him in October of 2003, oh, Judge, you won't ever see me again. Let's docket it for 6 months and you won't see me. I didn't even make it like 2.5 months. So here I was back arrested. And it was at that point, actually, as I was being arrested in Plymouth Township, that the phone rang and a gentleman was on the phone and ended up talking to him at the police station. And he turned out to be a volunteer with the organization I work for. And he said, my name is Dave. At the time, he had 31 years clean and sober. I thought he was lying. I'm like, who would have that? And he said, you know, I'm going to come to the jail to see you. And I thought, oh, I already have representation. Like, I had no clue, LCL, no clue. I had no idea who he was. And so, you know, and it's funny because in Plymouth Township, I went, and the detective, who is a very good friend of mine, was typing my statement like this. On that day, 55 pain pills a day, Ambien, Xanax, $2,000 of cocaine a week. That's what I went into jail on. And so he was typing like this, and I'm like, no, I will type my own statement. I will give you everything, but you need to let me type that statement. I cannot sit here for this. And I did. And I've presented several times with him since. And so I go to jail that day. I'm looking for the detox unit. They're like, wrong rehab. Put your mattress on the floor, and we'll check your vitals twice a day. Unequivocally, and I know this is not everybody's experience, this system absolutely saved my life. Judge Carpenter in Montgomery County absolutely, hands down, saved my life. Had he given me and my family what we asked for, I guarantee you I would be dead today. I don't say that lightly. We decided to put my sentencing off 8.5 months, thinking, oh, definitely going to get time served, and gave all my stuff away in jail, thinking I'm leaving. And at the sentencing, he said, you know, that's great that your family has these wonderful facilities. They're going to line up. That's great. They can send you wherever they want after 11.5 months, no good time, no work release. And at the time, I remember, like, we're like, he threw the book at me because I'm an attorney. No, he actually saved my life. He actually sentenced me to the option of a new life that day. And I bring meetings to prisons now, and I say, these mean judges, thank them, because you know how many people are dying because they can't get here? And that's just my story. So, and I say it in passing, I went into jail 110 pounds. I rolled out at 253 pounds. It's true, my parole and probation can certainly say that that's true. And it's funny because Dave used to come to the jail and he's like, the weight will fall right off of you. That was the only lie he ever told me. It's definitely a lie. So after that, Dave told me to show up, and that was at the point after I got out of jail that Rick came to see me. My family said, we're going to send you to the Karen treatment centers, and you're not going to fail for lack of us doing anything. This is our last effort at helping you. I tried to fight them. I did fight them. I had no grounds. I went. Rick came to see me, and that's when my recovery journey began. And after I got out of there, it was interesting. I'm like, I'm going to rehab. I have a year sober. They're like, what? Then why are you here? I'm like, I just got out of jail for 11.5 months. And I was huge. And so after that, Dave said, listen, I might have a law firm that would like to hire a paralegal. And, let's see if they're interested. And he was instrumental. Literally, if I hadn't met him, I never would have done anything with my law license. So I started working for a law firm at, in Montgomery County. And then Dave said, at this point I started going to AA meetings, NA meetings, sponsor, overachievers, that's what we are. And he said, you really need to contact the disciplinary board, who is the licensing authority for attorneys to practice law. He's like, just write him a letter, let him know what happened. So literally the letter, it's funny because you have to report things within 30 days. So it started like, sorry, I missed the 30-day reporting requirement by 4 years. I was arrested 5 times, jail, rehab. I sent it to Trooper. They called me, they're like, did you really write this? I did. And ultimately, we entered a 3-year suspension, joint petition in Pennsylvania. New Jersey did the same thing. About that same time, Dave said, you really should call LCL, that organization. If somebody has a problem with nitrous, pills, cocaine, alcohol, whatever, you have all these issues, you might be able to help some people. And so I became a volunteer with LCL. We had a Montgomery County lawyers meeting I would go to, and I just could not believe there were other people that had this same problem. And there was such a huge network of recovery. And so about 2008, and again, if Dave wasn't in my life, I would not be standing here today. He said, well, let's file for reinstatement. I'm like, well, I'm a felon. Not once, a convicted several-time felon. He said, yeah, let's just file and let's see what happens. So I had my reinstatement hearing. The detective that arrested me from Plymouth Township spoke on my behalf. My mom, although she kind of threw me under the bus that day, she was like, she opened all these credit cards in my name, and I was like, oh my God, now's not the time to say that. She's like, I called Bank of America, and they were going to prosecute her. Awesome, thanks, Mom. Dave spoke on my behalf, the partner in the firm and my sponsor. Then I spoke, and they were asking me questions like, well, if you kept getting arrested, why'd you keep doing it? I'm an addict. I couldn't even believe people were listening to me talk about why I should be reinstated to the practice of law. And then they asked, what would you do if you were in our position? And I said, something really stupid. I said, I would probably say come back in 5 years. Then why did you petition for reinstatement? And thank God they didn't listen to me. I was unanimously recommended to be reinstated to the practice of law in 2009 in Pennsylvania and in 2010 in New Jersey. It was interesting. In New Jersey, my law license was revoked, and then they suspended it. And I'm like, well, how can you suspend something that doesn't exist? So I created a petition to vacate the revocation. It was 176 pages. I asked Dave to read it. He said, I'm not reading it. I don't know that anybody's going to read it. File it. I did. I filed it. It was granted. And then I did a petition for reinstatement, and that was also granted in New Jersey. And then in 2011, I came on board with this organization as the deputy director underneath the former director, the one that gave that crazy story in law school, and had the immense honor and privilege of working with him. And I saw how tirelessly he worked and how he never said no. And it was really big shoes to fill, but I was definitely willing to try. He retired in 2015, and then I stepped up as executive director of LCL and Judges Concern for Judges. I want to talk about some of the rewards, and I won't make it that much longer. Ironically, after all of these arrests, and so help me God, it's a true statement, 6 months into a 11.5-month sentence, I remember thinking, if I only went to a different pharmacy. That's how insidious addiction was. I really did not think I had a problem. And I thought, God, it's the cops, not the cops' keys and radio again. I'm in a pharmacy again. Never did I think, God, the problem could be me. But the rewards of recovery, anything I can stand here and say, it's Judge Carpenter and Dave. It's not me. I was not looking to get sober January 29, 2004. In fact, I was trying to get my dad to bring drugs to jail. If you knew him, you'd realize how funny that is. So in 2000, I want to give a couple examples just of recovery, what recovery's done for me. In 2012, part of what I do with LCLs, I speak at the 9 law schools. I was speaking with the Board of Law Examiners, and the former character and fitness director put Facebook on her iPhone. Later, I saw a post that she needed a kidney. I will say I did not end up donating a kidney to her, but I went through testing, and my whole theory was, and anyone in recovery can get this, once we're given this gift of life, we will do almost anything to pay that forward. And I thought if I had the power, if that's the right word, to save another life, who was I not to do it? So I went through 9 months of testing. I was a match. They put me through the ringer, Hershey Med, obviously my addiction history. I had to come up with a list of 40 people, medication sponsor, that would support me through the process. We went as far as pre-admission testing on a June 3rd, 2013 surgery date. Went through a series of events. She got a call from UPMC that somebody there was passing away on life support and the kidney would work for her. And I share that because 110 pounds, I don't know how close I was to death. But to be deemed healthy enough to give life to somebody else, that's what recovery does for us. I'm not unique. I'm definitely not unique. My grandmother, 2011, was on hospice, and my sister, who is a doctor, we were all taking turns administering morphine. Not once did I think, I wonder what that tastes like. After she passed away, I said, I can't even believe. I think we had a conversation. You said, did that bother you? I didn't even think about it. I can't even explain that. That's something much greater than me. In recovery, I'm a product of donor insemination. So I grew up, I knew that. My sister and I both had different donors, but my parents were married. And so recently, last year, I decided I was going to send in my ancestry, my DNA to Ancestry to find out why I celebrate Christmas for 6 months a year when I was bat mitzvahed. And they came back and said, because I have oppositional defiance. And so lo and behold, to make a very long story short, after I received my, pie chart, I then was contacted by a woman saying, I have 50% of the same DNA as you, and you're my sister. Since that time, we have located 5 siblings, and we found our biological father. And my mom was kind enough to give up the Shore House for one weekend in August, and all of us met for the first time there and spent the entire weekend together. Beyond my wildest dreams. When we say in recovery, I mean, I couldn't even make that up. It wouldn't even have been on my radar to make something like that up. Of course, I'm the only addict of all of us. I asked them those 2 questions. Are you anything addiction? No, nobody else. Service-wise, so about paying it forward, what do I do service-wise? I am the treasurer for the International Lawyers of AA. Unfortunately, because of my criminal history, I was unable to make their conference in Vancouver last year. But I do serve as the treasurer. I also have a home group, and I'm the Grapevine rep for my home group Monday nights in Cumberland County. Probably the greatest service commitment is I get to go to Montgomery County Prison and Cumberland County Prison and walk in and share my experience, strength, and hope. I walk in and they look and think, now what are you going to have to say? And I'm like, really? I did the longest county sentence it was possible. And I share literally unequivocally how lucky they are to be there and get another chance. I had the honor and privilege of reenacting my, sounds weird to say it was an honor to reenact my sentencing, but I did, and Judge Carpenter was involved with that, and I actually had the immense privilege of giving him my 10-year medallion and thanking him for saving my life. I don't say that lightly. He has a hard time accepting any kind of responsibility, but had he given us what we wanted, I wouldn't be standing here today. In fact, I'm very passionate, like I said, addiction, mental health. My latest platform, which we just started filming for at the Capitol today, is a program on breaking the stigma of addiction, mental health, and pit bulls. I am a volunteer at the Harrisburg Humane Society. I take that volunteer commitment very seriously. And I fell in love with 2 Staffordshire Terriers, Amazing and Grace. I adopted them, and now we started filming a program on how the stigmas are truly just an illusion, whether it's a dog or addiction or mental health. We started that today. And that's quite an honor and a privilege to do that. I also take my 1 dog, Maisie, to memory care, and we volunteer there. And if I'm granted a pardon, I will become part of the pet therapy organization, but at this point I can't go into schools because of my criminal record. I think in the most basic form, I work very hard. I do everything I can. I take any opportunity I can to pay it forward. But in the simplest terms, I woke up today and I can feel love. I can feel pain. I can feel anger. I see the sky when it's blue. I can feel rain. For 5 years, I didn't feel that. I just wish that I could feel that. And today I feel that. I say it often, if the cards were fair, as we heard, I wouldn't be here. And that's why I feel it's so important that those of us in recovery look for opportunities to pay it forward. We know how lucky we are. And anyone in recovery, if we had, in the depths of our addiction, said what we wanted for our recovery, I would have said just to wake up and go to any job, and how short we would have sold ourselves. We're some of the most productive people in society. I exhaust myself, honestly. I'm in a STEP study group with my sponsor and other sponsees, and we were going over the 12th step on Sunday. And so when we read something, it really struck me, and I'm going to actually read it, and then I'm going to kind of close with this. In the NA STEP working guide on page 121 and 124, it reads, after we stay clean for a time, we realize the principles of AA or NA are actually completely universal and could probably change the world if everybody practiced them. I truly believe that. And page 124, when we think about where we have come from and what our recovery has brought to our lives, we can only be overwhelmed with gratitude. As it says in It Works, gratitude becomes the underlying force in all that we do. Our very lives can be an expression of our gratitude. It all depends on how we choose to live. Each one of us has something very special and unique to offer in gratitude. I'm going to close with this and say, I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe I went to law school so I could have this job. It wasn't to practice law. It was to be in this position and do what I do. I believe every drink, drug, crime, arrest, lie, manipulation was all necessary to get me here tonight. And I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I could probably do without the felon status, and we're working on that. But the truth is, I wouldn't change one thing. I am the best version of myself because I'm an addict. So with that, I'm going to thank you all so much for your time. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for asking me to share.
Okay, I know we're getting a little over time here. We just have a couple words from Commissioner Joe Gale, and then we're going to take a 2-minute break because I am so appreciative to the Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission for stepping in. We did not have enough doses of Narcan in our county, and they stepped in to help us tonight, so I'm very, very grateful to them. Please, let's all thank them. I will just say, before I introduce our Montgomery County Commissioner, and he will be brief, he promises, that we are able to get naloxone in the Norristown Health Center, on DeKalb Street in Norristown, Pottstown Health Center on King Street in Pottstown, and the Willow Grove Health Center at the Eastern Courthouse Annex on York Road in Willow Grove. And also Hope Stein, who is my greatest hope, because she's the one who I call when I'm on call for the county, which could go late into the hours of the night, as well as during the day. She picks up every single time. I don't know why, but she does. And she knows that I'm going to be begging for a bed. That's what we call it, begging for a bed. And she helps me get someone who's right in front of me into inpatient treatment. So they don't go back on the street. They don't go necessarily into jail. They can go into a bed. And that's a wonderful blessing. But Hope, you wanted to just tell us too.
You can just come to the renew table, and we have the FZO paperwork if you want to fill it out, so you can get it sent to your house. And Yorktown Pharmacy will call you to verify your address. So if you want it sent to your house, you can have it.
Wonderful. All right. So once again, just before we close, I want to thank the founding members of DARA, Greg Gifford, who began our program tonight, Lieutenant Jane Robertson from the Hatfield Township Police Department, Lieutenant Jerry Doherty from the Montgomery Township Police Department. And I just want to introduce briefly our Commissioner Joe Gale.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know I have to be brief here. It's late in the evening, but I wanted to share with you a new website that the Montgomery County government has launched less than 2 weeks ago. And some of the information I'd like to share with you this evening is from that website. And it's not a very short domain name, but it's moncopa.org.maps.arcgis.com. And it's an interactive. I went to the communications department. I said, is this what I tell them tonight? But that's the website. It has an interactive map, and it shows you all the information and statistics we have regarding drug addiction and the opioid crisis that we face here in the nation. And it's everywhere across the country. Here in Montgomery County, we're a very wealthy county, second wealthiest county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And even here, we have a chronic issue. And it's an issue that continues to increase if you look at the statistics. And I wanted to share with you that back in 2002, there was only 39 drug-related deaths in Montgomery County. In 2016, that number has increased to 249. In 2015, we had 177. So in 1 year, we went from 177 to 249. And a main problem with that is fentanyl. 87% of these related deaths have found that opioids were in the bloodstream, and a big proportion of this had fentanyl. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, fentanyl is up to 100 times more potent than morphine, and many times of that of heroin. So that's something that we have to battle right now. We have an overdose task force in Montgomery County that was started in 2014. They're constantly working hard to combat this. One of the things we have done is issued naloxone. All our police departments in Montgomery County have naloxone, a life-saving drug for those that face the overdose. In 2016, 993, so practically 1,000 naloxone administrations were done by police and EMS in the county, and that's either done by nasal spray or an injection. We also have several drug take-back locations. Again, all this is on that website. The Montgomery Township Police Department, right here where we are this evening on Stump Road, has a take-back location. And also in 2015, the Montgomery County Health Department issued a countywide standing order, a prescription that allows people to go into pharmacies and obtain naloxone. And here in Montgomery Township, the Giant Pharmacy, Giant Supermarket on Knapp Road, Target Pharmacy on Witchwood Drive, and Walgreens on North Wales Road all have the prescription order for naloxone. So I just sped through that, but it's something that's so chronic. Just this morning, I was talking to my mother, and she said, Joe, I'm on my way to a funeral. And I said, who is it? And she said, I'm going for a woman I grew up with since I was a little kid. And I said, that's a shame. She's so young to pass away. She said, no, it's worse than that. It's not her. It's her son, who's your age, 28 years old. I'm the youngest commissioner in the history of Montgomery County. And when I heard that this morning, I just can't believe how that mother, putting myself in that situation, how my mother would feel if that happened to me. And it's an honor to serve as county commissioner. And when I see the statistics, the biggest risk factor group is of the ages of 18 to 33, and they're white males with at least a high school diploma. So I would be right in that bracket. And when I think of myself, I'm not married yet, I don't have children yet, I have a whole life, God willing, in front of me. To see that age group, 18 to 33, is affected by this issue just shows you how important it is and how important it is that we must combat it. So I'd like to compliment all of you, the leadership of Judge Duffy. This is my second DARA forum I've attended. It's always well attended. But it just goes to show you that people really need the family unit behind them in order to combat what can be so difficult. In fact, we have a very similar story. I'm from Plymouth Township as well. I'm actually the underachiever in my family. I'm the oldest of three, and my brother and sister are twins. She's a doctor, and he's a lawyer. So similar family, and we have a house in Ventnor, New Jersey, not next to Margate. But we had success at a young age because we're a product of the family unit that was always behind us. And sometimes it doesn't matter what the family, where you live, your income level, your demographics, gender, race. It can happen to anyone, even star athletes. We saw Tom Petty pass away yesterday. I don't know much about his health history, but I'm sure he lived a rough life. He was fast-paced life. I'm sure he battled with drug addiction, and he died at 66 years of age. So it can happen to star athletes, movie stars, anybody. And it's important that they have the resources behind them. That's why I wanted to be here this evening. You have resources in Montgomery County government. We're lucky to have the president judge of the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas to be here this evening. We have District Judge Scott from Norristown, District Justice Duffy. So we want to be here to help the community and make sure that we're all a solid family unit and do it in a unified effort. So it's great to join you here this evening, and thank you for your commitment.
All right, if everybody has a handout, we'll just go ahead and work it with the handout. I'm not quite sure why the PowerPoint is not working. All right, so my name is David Fianco. I'm a prevention specialist. I do many things in Bucks County, but training people on Narcan has been one of the things that we have spent a lot of time on lately in the last few years. I work for the Council of Southeast Pennsylvania, which is a nonprofit organization. I've been around for about 40 years in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, but we have a tri-county reach. We are funded through the Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission, who is the single county authority in Bucks County and who is providing the doses this evening for this for you all after you take this short, condensed training. This is usually about a 45-minute to an hour training, but we're going to go shoot through this super condensed version. And what it will allow you to do is feel comfortable utilizing the Adapt 4 milligram nasal spray, which is a Narcan opioid reversal drug. It's also known as naloxone. Narcan is its trade name. You will be receiving a 2-pack, which comes with 2 4 milligram doses in blister packs. All right, these are temperature sensitive, so they should be stored in or about room temperature. Don't let them in the car overnight in a hot summer, in a cold winter night, and don't leave them in the car on a hot summer day. All right, with that said, something to understand what an opioid overdose is. How are we doing here? Are we plugged in over here on both of them? If you look at the slide where it says the lower brainstem, this is what basically keeps us alive. This is responsible for our respiratory rate, for our respiratory function. When an opioid overdose occurs, it slows the respiratory rate down to an unnatural state. Our breathing ceases or slows down to a point where oxygen is no longer sufficient in the brain ceases to signal the heart, and a person dies of cardiac arrest. Our goal with opioid reversal is by using Narcan to reverse that respiratory depression into respiratory function. People will be unconscious, unresponsive. Narcan will usually bring them back to not only responsive but conscious with a strong respiratory rate. The way that opioids work are you build up a tolerance over time, and these unnatural opioids, they build up in your body, and you need more and more as you take these drugs. The reason why you build a tolerance is because every time you take an opioid, there's another drug that is naturally produced in our body, which is called norepinephrine or noradrenaline, which is produced on this brainstem at the locus coeruleus, a small gland on it. And it's basically a protective factor. So every time a person takes an opioid, the respiratory rate slows, and this region of the brain goes, respiratory rate is slow. We need to kick up a natural stimulant, so it produces some noradrenaline. Keeps you alive, keeps you breathing. If you take it as prescribed for therapeutic purposes, this is your kind of safety net. But when a person starts abusing opioids, it's this cat and mouse chase. The more opioids you take, the more noradrenaline is manufactured. Opioids last about 4 to 6 hours in the human body. No matter how many you take, they will be depleted and metabolized within 4 to 6 hours. When you get to a height of dependency, addiction level use of opioids, you have a surplus of noradrenaline. thousands of times more than anything that is naturally produced. This does not metabolize in 4 to 6 hours. This takes 7 to 12 days for it to come back down to baseline and metabolize. During that time, you feel the full effects of having thousands of times more noradrenaline in your system than normal. So you experience what's called a withdrawal. And this is about 80 or 90% of the withdrawal effects, withdrawal symptoms are due to having an unnatural noradrenaline level. The reason why I bring this up is because it's really important when you give somebody Narcan to bring them into what's a comfortable state. You don't want to remove all of the opioids from that person's body. Despite not making sense, you would think you'd want to remove all the opioids to save their life. But if you have somebody who has this much opioids in their system and this much noradrenaline, that person is just feeling normal. Okay, that person isn't even feeling high. In order to feel high, they need to shoot past that noradrenaline level. All right. And that is the goal, and that unfortunately is how people overdose. So when somebody overdoses, they not only shoot past it a little, they far exceed it. And now they become unconscious, unresponsive, usually with a slow breath or slow pulse or no breath. So if you have all of these opioids in you, and you have this much noradrenaline that's supposed to be saving your life, but you've just shot by it because you've come into contact with something like acetylfentanyl, carfentanil, butylfentanyl. Carfentanil is approximately 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. Acetylfentanyl is about 20. And butylfentanyl is about 100 times. So depending on any of these fentanyls, a person unsuspectingly takes a dose that normally gets them just well or a little high, and now they're shooting up here. How much of this opioids do we want to remove? Where do we want to bring this down to? Do we want to bring it all the way down to baseline? No. We want to bring it level. Why? Because that is going to bring a person into what is a partial conscious or semi-sedated state. They're going to feel some low-level withdrawal symptoms, but they are not going to be in a full-blown withdrawal. And that's really important because usually in these bystander administrations, when you're administering Narcan to somebody who's unresponsive, unconscious, experiencing an opioid overdose, they are in a situation where if you bring them too far out, if you remove all of those opioids, that person is going to get up, they're going to feel a full withdrawal come on, and where are they going to go? They're going to leave the scene. And they're going to be not feeling too well. And the most important thing for that addicted brain is to feel well and to feel high. And they're going to do whatever it takes to get that. So now that person leaves. I talked about opioids last 4 to 6 hours in the human body. All right? Those opioids have only been removed from the synapse. They haven't been removed from the body. They're still floating around in the brain. What happened is that Narcan came in, and it replaced those opioids, those opioids in the mu receptor, in the receptor sites where those bind to, and they just kind of knock them out. All those opioids are still there, just floating around. Narcan only lasts about 30 to 90 minutes. I'm 175 pounds. If I was somebody who was experiencing an opioid overdose, that Narcan would probably be active in my metabolic rate, in my body weight, about 45 minutes. After that, the Narcan would be metabolized. Those receptor sites are now open again. And now what moves all back in? All those opioids. And now that person falls back into an overdose, all right, because they left the scene and now nobody around has any Narcan. Now, even a worse story than that is if the person goes out, uses more drugs, more opioids to try to reverse the Narcan, but is unsuccessful. Now that Narcan is metabolized, the original opioids move back in, plus all the new opioids move back in. Thank you very much. We're good. We're there. All right. So that is the idea. Is we want to bring that person out to what's a partially sedated, semi-alert state. And the reason being is because we want that person to not run from the scene, because the first thing we did when we discovered that somebody is overdosing is, what did we do? We called who? 911, you gotta call 911 because none of us are, I don't think we are doctors or medical trained professionals. So the first thing you do when you discover that somebody is unresponsive, despite what the situation is, it may be a stroke, maybe a heart attack, you don't know. You call 911, now 911 is en route to your location, and now you can provide that person with Narcan due to the Good Samaritan Act. The Good Samaritan Act protects the caller, so if two people are getting high, one person can call, the police will arrive, the EMS will arrive, and those two people will not experience any type of charges pressed on them unless they have a warrant. You're going to go see about the warrant. Probation and parole depends on the probation and parole department, the county, the township, how they deal with it. It is limited immunity. It's not full immunity. But if it's just two people who are getting high together and they don't have a warrant, they're good. Okay, they're both going to be, the one who called can leave the scene. The one who is experiencing the overdose is going to be provided more Narcan if needed, if it was already administered on site, and they're going to be transported to an emergency room. All right, why is it important we get a person to the emergency room? What's the average emergency room stay here in Montgomery County, Bucks County?
Well, basically because the Narcan's going to wear off and they could overdose again.
Absolutely. And how long is the average emergency stay? About 4 to 6 hours. How long do opioids last in the human body? About 4 to 6 hours. So the emergency room stay allows that person to metabolize that opioid under a medically monitored situation. That Narcan is worn off, the opioids are out, now that person is safe, they're both baseline. They still have all that noradrenaline, so if they're released on their own recognizance, where are they going to go? Hopefully to detox rehab. That is the idea of detox, is to 7 to 12 days to allow that noradrenaline to come back down baseline so that they don't have that desire to use to avoid the withdrawal. So Narcan is not a magic bullet, but it will save a life, and it will allow, if done properly, for you to get that person to emergency room setting, where in that emergency room setting, they might come into contact with a CRS or a certified recovery specialist who would be able to encourage that person to enter treatment or detox and find them a bed. So it's this part of a whole process of organizations like the SCAs in the county, the treatment providers, the police, the law enforcement agencies that are involved in that. So it's a whole role. Now, I'm going to move forward to how to, I already talked about temperature sensitivity. It needs to be room temperature when it's stored. If you want to take another online training, it's on here. You can go log on to any of these and take another training, print out a certificate if you'd like. I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes on how to respond to an overdose. Please excuse me for this condensed version. Again, this is usually about a 45-minute training. Yeah, question.
I don't feel like the nose spray Narcan is effective at all.
Oh, it's definitely very effective.
It wasn't for me. My son overdosed last week on fentanyl, and he had two Narcan nose sprays.
Yes.
And one injection. The nose spray gave him one breath. That was it. Took the injection to finally get him back.
So which was administered first?
The nose.
The nose spray. This is, and the way that this is going to work is it's titration, means that you give a little bit of the drug, you wait for a response. If there's no response, you give more of the drug. So when you're talking about mucosal absorption, this is a 4 milligram dose, all right? There's 2 doses in here, so it's a total of 8 milligrams in a box, which sounds like a lot, and it is. But it's 60% bioavailability through the mucosal lining of your nose, so if you insufflate or snort a drug, it's the fastest way to the brain. It's faster than IV. IV, you get 100% of the drug, but through insufflation, it's 60% of that drug immediately delivered to the brain, despite not having a pulse or a breath. Okay, so this is a home run version right here, because it's mucosal lining, brain. Intramuscular works very well. IV works very well, but there's a distance here. All right, the nasal spray works very well. And with it being 60% mucosally absorbed, you're looking at about 2.3, 2.4 milligrams being delivered. All right, so the nasal spray does work. And the way that it works is when you find somebody, you are going to be scared if you find somebody who's unresponsive. The first thing you're going to want to do is determine whether or not that person is responsive, all right, which means are they just sleeping or are they unconscious and unresponsive? You go up to that person. If they're laying on the couch, the floor, sitting in a chair, their head back, whatever, you give them that person, you call their name. If you know their name, you use their name. If not, sir, ma'am, dude, whoever. If there's no response to the verbal cue, then you just gently grab their shoulder. You give them a soft shake. You don't want to give them whiplash. And if there is still no response, that person is more than likely unresponsive, okay, at that point. No response to verbal cue, no response to physical stimulation. You can give a sternal rub, which is knuckles between the chest bone, okay, on the sternum. But this is not always going to be very comfortable for a perfect stranger to do that to somebody if you do not know them. So shoulder shake is enough in this situation. If it is a loved one or somebody you know, you can give that sternum rub. It's painful stimulation. A lot of times that will get that person stimulated. At this point, you determine that they're unresponsive. You call 911 because we need medical professional there. At which point, after you call 911, you look, listen, feel for breath. If there is no breath or no pulse, you do not start CPR unless you are CPR certified, okay? You can do that. But with this version, this is FDA approved, just to provide without a rescue breath, without CPR, okay? So if there is no breath, it's your option to give a rescue breath, all right? But you do not have to do that. You can immediately unseal one of these packs and you pick the nostril of your choice, all right? You blister it out and you peel it out. It's a quote sign, thumb underneath, 2 fingers on the top, 2 fingers to the top of the nose, 1 firm push, and it's sprayed up to the nose, all right? Now at this point, it says in the instructions, wait 2 to 3 minutes for a response. If there's no response, rip open the second pack and just administer it up the opposite nostril. Why do you want to make sure you go up an opposite nostril? There may be occlusion, scar tissue, blockage. When you do place it up there gently. Do not shove it. You don't want to start bleeding because epitaxis occurs, which means bleeding out. Once it bleeds out, it will not absorb. So you alternate nostrils if 2 are needed. The beautiful thing is 2 to 3 minutes between doses is you have a response time here in Montgomery County of about like 7 minutes, I think, for emergency services. So before you need a 3rd dose, emergency services will more than likely be there. You can stock up on this if you're concerned. And with the fentanyls out there now, it is not unheard of needing 3 or 4 of these to reverse somebody. It's not that this version is faulty at all or is not as effective as others. It's just that the fentanyl that is out there is usually going to be a carfentanil analog, and it is a very, very potent opioid, full agonist. Ideally, you want to have your head, the person's head, horizontal. Ideally, you don't want to be putting it up somebody's nose if they're sitting up straight or kind of tilted forward, because you want it to rest on the lining and be absorbed. But at the same time, you don't want to put that person in any type of jeopardy by moving them if you're not able to, and you don't want to jeopardize yourself. So you work with the situation the best way you can. If the person's unconscious on a couch, you just lay their head back over the arm and you administer it, all right? But you don't want to put yourself in harm's way or that person in harm's way by trying to maneuver them around. It will work. So once you administer that, you wait 2 to 3 minutes. It says in the directions 2 to 3 minutes. What do you do? 2 or 3 minutes. I would recommend that with 2 minutes, you wait 2 minutes between doses if there's no breath or pulse, because this is now even a more serious emergency. If there is a breath and a pulse, wait the 3 minutes. Because what we want to do is we want to make sure we're giving this drug time to work. Because as soon as you administer it, it starts chipping away at the opioids. And if you give the person the second dose too soon, it will bring them into an overdose down here, a reversal down here, to where they're going to be experiencing some of the more severe withdrawal symptoms, which means they may not be as compliant to go with the ambulance to the emergency room, where they will receive medical screening and care and monitored for 4 to 6 hours. We want the person to be comfortable. We want to get them to a hospital so they can be monitored. And now in the hospitals, we have certified recovery specialists, which may introduce them to the pathway to recovery and treatment and get them into a detox. So there is a method to the administering it correctly. You don't want to give 2 doses at once. You just give 1, wait 2 to 3 minutes accordingly. If there's no response, provide a second one. You've already called 911, so they're on their way. Once they do regain consciousness, you're going to want to monitor them. Do not leave them. Make them comfortable. Talk to them kindly. Treat them with love and kindness because you just saved their life and you want to save their life. And you'll just want to let them know what happened. You were unconscious. I provided you with Narcan. Emergency medical services are on the way. You're going to be okay. Just relax. That person, if done properly, will probably be partially sedated. They may nod back in and out. If they do nod back out, you just give them a shoulder shake and make sure they're still there. If they respond, even if it's a grunt or a, oh man, yeah, I'm here, then that's fine. If they fall back unresponsive and you still have another dose, you can give that second dose if they fall back to unresponsive state before emergency services get there. All right, so continue to evaluate them. Do not leave them alone. And when you provide the EMS with all of that information when they get there. Other than that, any questions real quick as far as how to administer this? This was like super quick, super condensed.
Cold feeling they get afterwards after they're administered the Narcan.
Well, that's basically the reversal of the opioid effect. The opioids give that kind of warm feel.
Normal thing.
Yeah, it's very normal. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? One of the things that we ask is that if you have a couple forms in there, please keep the quick start guide with your doses. That is ADAPT's step-by-step guide, because we as civilians lose about 60% of our intelligence in emergency situations. And even though this made sense this evening, in emergency situation, you may need something to remind yourself. So keep that instruction, that quick start guide with the doses. The other form you have there is what's called the naloxone utilization questionnaire. Since Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission is providing you these doses this evening, one of the things that their efforts and our efforts combined really are trying to gather is the effectiveness and how many lives are actually touched and saved by the tireless efforts. So what the naloxone utilization questionnaire is, it just captures the event. It does not capture first and last name or any type of identifying information. It will just allow us to really justify continuing to put these out there. So we need to have that feedback there, saying, hey, this is working, this is saving lives, this is good stuff. So if you do use one of these doses, please fill that out and forward it to Mallory Perotti. It says Showalter on there. I believe it's still bounced to that, her new last name. Thank you for your time. I think we are well out of time now, I wish you all well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. Very, very appreciated. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. We make it work.
Very kind. We learn. We give everybody who's
Thank you.
interested.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. That was very informative.
Thank you.
So David was able to show you the box. When you open the box, you can open it tonight or not, that's entirely up to you. There are 2 of these in the box, right? Each one of these is the Narcan. When you said take it out of the blister pack, it's really just put your finger through any kind of blister pack. It's not like one of those really difficult ones. It just comes right out. Important to note, as David said, it's just a plunger, right? You just put it between your thumb and your 2 fingers, and it goes up the nostril. I'm going to tell you now, and I hope you remember this, do not prime it. Don't get it ready to go in the nose. It's ready to go. It's one spray. If you prime it, you'll lose the dose. And I say that because that happened last week, and it happened with somebody who was working for an agency who found someone, and they were able to revive the person and use another dose, but they went through a couple. So just so you know, if you ever have to use it, don't prime it first to try it out. The trying out is in the nasal passage. Okay? So that's what it's going to look like. We will provide the doses to you. Does everybody have a form to fill out? No. Okay, so let's see. Come on over, we'll do those right here. And so, let's see, what we have is, if you want to come up here and get in the line. Check, we will just make sure that you have this one. Yes.